Catherine, the Princess of Wales' appearance at Royal Ascot was cancelled. But was it really cancelled last minute? Or is this another comms blunder to add to Kensington Palace's PR machine? That is sort of the fascinating question here because I have been following royals for a long time. I have worked in communication, so I know how important it is to put out not only the right message, but to manage the message well, manage the fallout of something well, all these sorts of things. And I've seen, at least in this instance, the fourth time of Kensington Palace, I feel like dropping the ball. And as a result, needlessly fueling speculation about Catherine's health. We had indications already that Catherine was probably not going to attend Ascot today. And yet somehow something wasn't communicated and the inaccurate information was given to the press and the world. And as a result of Catherine's seemingly last minute cancellation just 30 minutes later, it was raising all sorts of questions that never needed to be asked. So, we are going to explore this today because it is so important to understand communications, what is done right, what is done wrong, because as the general audience, not everybody knows and allows us to better evaluate how, let's say, various royal palaces are performing. So, we are going to get into all of this. But if you haven't been to Royal News Network before, my name is Brittany. I do provide compelling royal commentary. So, please hit that subscribe button. I would absolutely love to have you back. Now, I am just getting back from London, so I'm still pretty much, very, very much suffering from jet lag. So I'm going to keep the Crown Report section here very short and brief, and we're going to talk about Princess Catherine Amalia of the Netherlands because she recently did a event with her father where she received a brooch and her official regiment in the military was recognized. And her Royal Highness had just fallen from her horse last week and had surgery. So I was impressed to see her out and about. Granted, I have broken actually both my foot and my wrist. You have to go out and do things in the world. Like that's just part of it. I was actually in Hawaii when I broke my wrist and I had to have surgery. So I had a plate and 9 screws in my wrist. And so I still went and did a helicopter ride over the volcanoes in Hawaii. I still did a lot of things with the family, but was I also pretty heavily medicated? Yes. Yes, I was. So I was very impressed with Amalia here. Now, we know she had surgery. Most likely hardware was involved. So she's still recovering from that. It was clear that her left side was still sort of swollen. You could see that her hands are a little bit more swollen on the left side. She was treating it very gingerly as she should. She'll probably get into occupational therapy here pretty quickly to get mobility back. At least that was my experience 2 weeks post-surgery. And again, major surgery, like 30 plus stitches. You probably can't totally tell, but there's a lot of, I got to switch it this way, 30 plus stitches down the length of my wrist and stuff. A lot of hardware that I was in physical therapy literally the day after they took my stitches out. So this is a very fast process, which I think is great to increase mobility. So wishing her all the best as she recovers and very impressed still that she got up and did that. I mean, I think I could have, but within about a week, I was not, or less than a week, I wasn't taking the heavy duty pain meds anymore. But I'm sure she was pretty heavily medicated. She seemed to be struggling a bit, but I give her massive props for going out there. And that is not to say that Catherine should have gone out in Royal Ascot, because I know some people who will make comments about that. But no, but I want to talk about communications because I have criticized Harry and Meghan's communication strategy. And I have also talked about the palaces. And I hate to say it, but this is another example, I feel like, of comms dropping the ball here. So, what a communications team job is to set the public narrative for the company, for the individual person, for the group, what have you, and to make sure that the communications is clear. Because one of the things I criticized Meghan Markle for recently is that her comms is not clear. She basically sounded like she wasn't going to have any new products until 2026 for her brand. And then a week later, backtracked and go, oh, no, I am. And people would criticize it going, well, that wasn't what she said. And I was like, but that was pretty much what she said. And the thing is, if you're not clear in your communications, people can misinterpret things. Now, I will add a caveat to say that people sometimes do purposely misinterpret things. They don't really care what you're saying. They just see a headline, they just see a sentence. I find that a lot on X, that they didn't actually really read what somebody actually wrote. They're just reacting to the picture, the image, the caption, the title, what have you. So you do have that crowd too. But at the same time, a communications team is there to make sure the person that they're representing, that their image is clear, that there's no confusion, that there's no issues, and those sorts of things so that they can portray their best selves to the public. That is a communications team job. In addition to that, their job is to manage fallout. So let's say example, your principal says something very stupid. Now, the principal in this instance would be whoever you're representing, the highest person of the order. Like let's say a CEO of the company says something insanely stupid. Then it's the communications team's job is to figure out, do you need to apologize? How do you apologize? How do you not apologize yet recognize also that there was fault? Like there's so many different things that goes into communications. It's all about being able to portray your side well and to make sure to avoid any mistakes, any confusion. Like that is what a comms team, communications team is there to do. And this includes PR and all sorts of things. And it's there to really be the best foot forward for whoever they're representing. And I hate to say it, but I feel like there's been some pretty, I would say, not so great moves on the part of the Kensington Palace communications team, especially over the last year. And this is a mixed bag because I think some of it falls on them and some of it also falls on Catherine and William. Because if the communications team doesn't have all the information, it should not be a surprise that something goes out that you didn't anticipate. So let's go over a couple of the examples before getting into this latest one. So the first is the Colonel review at Trooping the Color. So this was going to be a week before trooping. Catherine was going to do the Colonel's review. It's kind of sort of a practice run, basically, and she was going to review the troops. And this went out, and I actually bought tickets. I actually bought 2 tickets so I could figure out where I wanted to stand when I was there. So I would have 2 tickets. And all of a sudden, a couple hours later, it came out, oh, no, Catherine is not going to attend. We had to cancel this. Now, this was before we knew about the Catherine's cancer treatment. And here's where I say there could be 2 coins to this situation, that there's 2 sides that are, let's say, not communicating as well as they should. And this was before, again, we knew Catherine had cancer. So I could see what is happening is that Catherine's really keeping that news within her family and maybe 1 or 2 of the closest aides. Maybe not even that. And so Catherine has this situation. And so the palace doesn't know that. Let's say even it's Buckingham Palace who was in charge of this and they didn't know that. Well, they're going to run with the information they've had probably for months at this point because they don't know the true situation going on. And so it looks bad though to backpedal, because I remember thinking at the time, I was like, because the tickets went on sale in mid-June. So this was shortly before she announced what the situation actually was. But I was thinking, well, by June, I mean, she was supposed to be back by Easter, which was March 31st abouts. And so it was like, by June, she should be okay, right? So it raised, of course, a lot of questions like what is going on? And that's what you want to avoid. Because of the lack of communications, additional questions were raised that should not have been raised. And so I don't know where the breakdown was, because I can also see a lot of maybe the people in the Kensington Palace team did not know Catherine had cancer, which was why there was this lapse of communications, because Catherine and William were trying to keep it close. But as a result, also as well, they weren't giving their comms team the information that they needed. And somebody at the top wasn't there to go to whoever needed to at the palace and go, Catherine can't do this. Please don't announce it. Because again, I want to reemphasize, you don't want people to ask questions you don't want them to be asking. At that point, if they had stopped that, nobody would be wondering what was going on with Catherine's health, because they would just anticipate the March 31st return. And I don't know, was that prompted Catherine to come out when she did? I mean, she kind of had to at some point because she wanted to be back. But again, all sorts of things going on. The second thing is the Mother's Day situation. And this one, I felt a bit more for Catherine and William here, because I think what happened, this is just my personal opinion, Catherine took the picture, obviously maybe wanted to amend some things, because she's still recovering, but at the same time too, she's not in, let's say, full health. Maybe she was still taking some medications and just could not quite get the photoshopping done well. Release the picture, people go crazy over it. My position always was, I was like, I mean, photoshopping happens all the time, guys. This is kind of stupid to be obsessing over, to be quite honest. But it raised all sorts of needless speculation. Catherine had to come out and apologize. And in that instance, if Catherine wanted to post something, everything should always go through her comms team. Even if it's something very personal, put it through the comms team. And the reason is that hopefully somebody could catch something like that and go, oh, no, 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 wait, wait, wait. I see issues here. Now, again, Catherine might have been doing a little bit of Photoshop before and been perfectly fine, but with the health situation, maybe she just couldn't do it as well as she used to or was able to do at the time. And so something was lapsed. But that should be something always given to her, let's say, team going, hey, here's the picture. Can you please change this, this, and this? And you can get a professional to do it and they can get it done right away. So again, I think though this was trying to keep the information about Catherine's condition as much in-house as possible. And I totally understand that. A lot of questions and everything were raised because of the mixed messaging. And then we get on to hashtag where is Kate, which was around sort of that March time period. And the reason I bring this up is number one, it was insanely stupid because at the time it was like late February, early March. We all knew Catherine wasn't supposed to be back until Easter, which was March 31st. Yet people online kept going, where is Kate? Where is Kate? And the palace, I think, in their lack of understanding of how social media is truly driving the news engine, just was like, this is stupid. We'll ignore it. And there is some wisdom in that, 150%. But in that instance, they were wrong. It just was a machine that grew and grew and grew and grew. And it was pushed a lot by Harry and Meghan people. We had Christopher Bosie as well, endlessly obsessing over a very innocuous video of Catherine and William leaving the Windsor like farm shop or something. He was like going insane about that. It was quite dumb again because of, in some ways, a not so great communication strategy. You had all these disparate factions sort of driving the narrative rather than the Kensington Palace PR team doing it. That's what PR is there to do, to drive the narrative. They're the ones that are supposed to be on the narrative bus. And they sort of let it lapse. Much to, I would argue, disappointment, you could say, of how Catherine is portrayed in the media. Again, you can't control everything, but the hands-off strategy, the let's let stupidity ride thing because it's just stupid and it'll like just kind of dissipate. It just doesn't. And so their job was to not, let's say publicly, but behind the scenes, there are ways to sort of try to manage things. And that wasn't happening. And so now we get to this particular situation. And I want to stress that I don't think this is actually Catherine's fault. I don't think this one particularly is because we actually have some indications the entire time that Catherine was probably not going to attend today. So I want to bring your attention here to the list of who is giving away awards today. And this came out, and I remember posting it, and I remember clocking this specifically because I remember thinking to myself, it just mentions William here, the Prince of Wales' stakes, and just the Prince of Wales attending. And I was thinking to myself, like, we're saying the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester up here. Will we not say the Prince and Princess of Wales? And somebody else pulled up a different trophy presenters thing from like 2023, which did say the Prince and Princess of Wales. So my initial thought here when I saw this yesterday was, okay, we know for sure William is coming. And I didn't say this, but I probably should have mentioned it. It's like Catherine could come, but it's tenuous because they're not committing here. They should be, but they're not, which means it's up for debate and question. Or at this point, they knew she wasn't coming, or it was a high probability that she was not coming. And as somebody's mentioned, this was probably actually Buckingham Palace's PR team. And again, what we don't want to do as, let's say, if I'm part of the system, what I don't want the press to get wind of is that the Kensington Palace and Buckingham Palace's PR teams are not communicating effectively, which is what I feel like we see here. So we have these indications that William's going to attend, but Catherine's a question mark. And so now we get to the situation, which is that Ascot officials confirmed at 12 p.m. the princess was due in the second carriage with William. But then less than a half an hour later, Kensington Palace confirmed just before 12:30 that Kate would not be attending, and the revised carriage list was published by Ascot. And Mail Online understands the princess was disappointed not to be in attendance, but she has to find the right balance as she fully returns to public-facing engagements. There's nothing wrong with her saying, I really can't do this because it's very hot right now in the UK. I think they're actually supposed to get into the upper 80s later this week. You're out in the sun a lot. It's hot. You have to wear dresses that may not, let's say, breathe very well. So I can completely understand why Catherine would not be comfortable attending. But the thing is, this should have never gotten this far because at 12 o'clock, I'm sure Catherine and William both knew she wasn't attending. And I'm sure her PR team knew she wasn't attending. Yet, somehow that information did not get to Ascot. And that is a lapse of PR. And here's a couple of the scenarios I can think. Number one, the most innocuous would be that this was just a mistake, that this had been the original. They had changed it last night, and the person posting didn't get the memo. That does happen 150%, but it could be a couple of other things. Number one is that Kensington Palace did not inform Ascot officials or Buckingham Palace fast enough. And as a result, the list that they all knew would go out at 12 went out at 12. And it's like, oops, I guess we forgot to inform them as well as we should have, or something. Or Catherine was always planning on attending, but did have to pull out last minute. I think in this situation, though, the more likely answer is that it was either a total clerical error, which could 100% happen, or it was a lack of communications between the PR teams. And that doesn't reflect well on everyone, for certain. But here's the thing that I think Kensington Palace was responsible for. If I'm a member of the Kensington Palace PR team, I'm on the phone 100 times going, did you change it? Did you change it? What does it look like? Let me see it. Let me make sure that you're posting the right thing. Unfortunately, what I think I've seen from the Kensington Palace PR team is sort of a, let's say, laissez-faire attitude, that they're not quite as quick to respond as they should be. Now, maybe I'm being too harsh as an American, but as somebody who's been in PR and public relations and those sorts of things, like, it really does benefit you to be super on top of it. Now, I'm actually not saying that I would be an expert in that at all, but there are people who are super qualified to be that aggressive in making sure that no bad information gets out there. And the reason is because now we have questions. What's wrong with Catherine's health? Why isn't she feeling good? Why did she have to cancel last minute? Is she sick? Is the kid sick? Is it her allergies? Like, I've heard somebody mention, like, a whole bunch of questions now hang out there that didn't have to hang out there. Because my initial question was, when I saw it yesterday, is, oh, we know Prince William is attending. Does that mean Catherine's attending? So she didn't attend. It's like, that's too bad, but oh well. If she did attend, great. But if we didn't have this mix up with the carriages, now there's this whole additional media cycle going on. Now, you could say I'm participating in that, and to a certain extent, that is true. But I think it's important to address this as well, is that we've had too many, I would argue, mistakes that have happened over the last couple of years. And I think Catherine and William need to have a PR team in some ways, or have somebody on their team who's a bit more rigorous in sort of the changing social media landscape. Because this is something I think a lot of royals have had trouble with, is that they have these very antiquated institutions. And there's a lot of wisdom in that, but the social media game has changed everything. And so, like, when it comes to royal coverage, it's like my channel gets a lot of views. I would love to be able to cover things directly more often, but I'm not part of the Royal Rota. I'm going to have to work and try to see if I can somehow get attached to that. But even when it came to the coronation, I asked, hey, can I get press credentials? They're like, well, unless you're attached to a major media outlet, the answer is no. Now, I understand some of that, but RNN has, like, closing in on 80 million views overall and 188,000 subscribers. That's doing better than some of the major news outlets. And that's not the case all the time, but the media landscape is changing, and I don't think the palace is changing fast enough with it. And I would argue some of the other palaces, like I would say the Scandinavian countries, their websites are excellent. I don't think the Buckingham Palace one is. I think the Scandinavian countries get it 100% correct here, which is that they have their own media bank. So if you go to Norway, Sweden, or Denmark, you go to their page, there is a whole host of editorial images that you can download and use for strictly editorial purposes, which they control. Because the palace now still goes through Getty Images, not all the time anymore, but sometimes. And it really actually is more beneficial for you to actually control a lot more of it by having your own selection of pictures immediately available to the public and to journalists. Images that you approve of. You don't even have to put out that many, but they're images that are there. They also have a way to easily communicate with the PR teams. Now, I understand that that's really a lot more difficult with the Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace one because they'd be inundated constantly. I think they did finally put out an email address to contact, which is a step in the right direction. But it's just very much kind of something, a ship that's slowly moving. And I think in other aspects of the royal family, it's perfectly fine to have a slow moving ship. But social media is changing constantly. And I think the Palace, Catherine and William's team would be so benefited by getting a little faster with this changing world. And I just don't think they're there yet. I don't think they're there yet. I feel like this is sort of a blunder that should not have happened, to be quite honest. I think there were a multitude of ways to avoid it. And it's sad that they didn't take it in that direction. And as a result, the person they're supposed to represent suffers because now people are speculating about her health in the broader world. And the only reason we are, in my opinion, is because there was a lack of communications somewhere. That 30 minutes, if they could go back and let Ascot know at 11:55 a.m. that she was not going to attend, none of this would be happening. Now, granted, it could have been 100% a clerical error. Could have 100% been that. But we did at least have a pretty good indication that she probably wasn't going to attend. And in the future, I think the communications teams need to do better, to be quite honest. Now, I'm not, let's say, 100% an expert or anything like that. I can't tell them anything about what to do. But I feel like for the benefit of Catherine, especially as she's continuing to recover from this health crisis, the more they can protect her by being as rigorous as humanly possible in their communication strategy, the better. Because the thing is, guys, we have no clue how many engagements she's canceled last minute because they didn't announce it until the last minute. And I think that's amazing. That's how it should always be done while they're in this period of recovery. That way, we never know. That's the thing is we should never know how many engagements are canceled last minute. We should never know that. There might be some exceptions like sickness that does happen, but we should never know, at least for Catherine's sake. And we haven't so far, except for this blunder recently in her recovery phase, known engagements she was going to be at and then had to cancel. And I'm sure there's probably been a couple. I'm sure there has been. And the communications team has been good there because I think they controlled it all. The problem is when you're attached to another comms team and another. So we had 3 comms team going, Ascot, Buckingham Palace, and Kensington Palace. The communications broke down somewhere. This should not be happening. If they avoid this, there's no broader discussion. And there's no foolproof solution because if this was just basically an admin error, those things 100% happen. But if there's a way to avoid this, if there was a way to avoid this, that wasn't like an innocent mistake, if there was a way to have somebody make that extra call at 11:55 a.m. to make sure the right information was going out, then none of this would be happening. So hopefully we don't have a situation like this again. And I will say, like, if it's an engagement announced 5 days ahead of time and she does have to cancel last minute, that's different. But like that 30-minute window, I believe somebody knew before 12 and somebody failed to communicate. And that doesn't benefit Catherine. So guys, let me know what you think of this video. Let me know what you think of this broader discussion of royal comms. I'd love to get your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Nash, I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.